Hi, I'm Raj, the Reading Fairy, and welcome to a chapter read of The Hexagon's Christmas by Simi Ramdutt. Now, The Hexagons is a beloved series, local historical romance, and of course, we do love some festivities there as well. So, chapter 1. Edward massaged his temples as the din of children's laughter and shrieks grew louder. The noise was unbearable, though he doted on his friend's little ones. Today their boundless energy grated on his nerves. He wasn't sure if it was the weariness from the long journey to Constantinople with Nicholas to bring back his new bride Rose, or the nagging feeling that he was no longer as resilient as he once was. 34 wasn't old, not by any measure. Yet today he felt every one of his years and perhaps a few more. The children's chaos showed no sign of abating. Their mothers, princesses and duchesses no less, were in the thick of it, spurring the little devils on with exaggerated laughter and playful taunts that only drew louder shrieks. Edward sighed and stood. He needed silence, peace, anything to drown out the scandalous scene unfolding before him. Princesses and duchesses should not behave like this. But of course, he knew these women far too well to be surprised. In polite society, nothing touched them. They were the very picture of refinement, gliding through ballrooms as if sculpted from marble. Yet behind closed doors, they shed their pristine facades like silk gloves, indulging in this unsavory chaos without a care for propriety. Their husbands, seated nearby, simply watched with mild amusement, as if this were a private theatre meant for their enjoyment. Edward retreated to his study, grateful for the blessed distance Richmond House afforded him from the chaos of children and their overly indulgent parents. The room, quiet and dimly lit by the glow of a roaring fire, offered a sanctuary from the clamour. He loosened his cravat, breathing in the faint scent of cedar and old leather, and allowing himself a moment of peace. A few moments later, Alexander strolled in, his hair slightly mussed and his waistcoat unbuttoned at the top. He collapsed into an armchair with a dramatic sigh, rubbing a hand over his face. "I adore those little devils," Alexander began, his voice tinged with softness. Edward snorted softly. "I know what you mean. But by God, they are more than a handful," Alexander exclaimed, leaning back and stretching his legs out before him. The door creaked open again, and Richard entered, his brow arched as he caught the tail end of the conversation. "Imagine living with him," he remarked dryly, settling himself into another chair. Not a beat later, James, George, and Nicholas followed, the latter two chuckling as they shut the heavy door behind them. "I wouldn't change a thing, though," George said seriously, his voice cutting through the room's newfound quiet. The sentiment hung in the air for a moment, before Richard, James, and Nicholas murmured their agreement, each nodding gravely as though they had convened to solve some profound matter of state. Edward moved toward the fireplace, seeking solace in the simple ritual of tracing the holly and ivy draped over the mantelpiece. The evergreen leaves and bright red berries had been carefully arranged, symbols of eternal life and protection against evil. His fingers lingered on a sprig of ivy as a wry thought crept into his mind. Protection against evil, indeed, he mused. Who, he wondered, would protect them from those sweet, devilish children? A faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth as he turned back to his companions. For all the noise and mayhem the children brought, they had a way of warming the heart, a kind of joyous chaos that no amount of distance or quiet could truly replace. James poured them all a brandy and noticed a curious piece of correspondence peeking out of the stack on Edward's desk. Royal Mail, James remarked, getting all the men's attention. Edward cocked his head to one side questioningly and walked over to his desk, pulling out the letter, which was made from a high quality linen rag. The black wax was imprinted with the king's official seal, ensuring that everyone knew it was authentic. Edward raised an eyebrow in question and broke the seal. To our right trusty and right entirely beloved cousin, His Grace the Duke of Richmond, we write to apprise you of our intention to participate of the approaching Christmas season at your valued company at Richmond House. It is our bidding to arrive on the 24th day of December, residing under your roof, and we will take our leave upon the feast of the Epiphany. The season, with its holy observances and cherished traditions, offers a fitting juncture to reflect upon the bonds that bonds us with those of extraordinary devotion and worth. Your Grace, along with your household, has long stood as a wonderful example of both. As such, we are certain that this time will be marked not only by piety, but also by the comforts and hospitality for which your house is renowned. Preparations for our arrival and sojourn need not exceed those of a modest and decorous nature, as the solemnity of the season bids us to embrace simplicity and extend the invitation to the Duke of Beaufort, the Duke of Grafton, the Duke of Surrey, the Duke of Bedford, and the Duke of Cambridge. We place confidence in your discernment to arrange such matters as befit the occasion and your household's dignified manner. You may be assured that this visit reflects not only our confidence in your stewardship, but also the regard in which we hold you and your house. It is with anticipation that we look forward to this time of sacred celebration and fellowship. George R. Well, Nicholas asked, his voice breaking the heavy quiet. Edward let out a slow breath, leaning against the mantel. The king is coming. The room stilled. No one spoke. They didn't need to say it aloud. 6 of them under one roof, no place to run or hide. The king himself would demand their loyalty, urging them to take up arms in a war they had tried so hard to avoid. Each had their reasons, private and unspoken, but they knew there would be no easy refusal this time. Edward downed the last of his brandy, the glass hitting the table with a dull thud. He took a moment, exhaling slowly before reaching for the bell pull. When the footman appeared, Edward's instructions were clipped and direct. Send for Mr. Beckett. It was not long before the head butler, Mr. Beckett, entered the room. His posture was stiff with formality, his eyes momentarily alight with the pride of being summoned before the Duke and other members of the Hexagons. That fleeting confidence, however, evaporated the moment Edward informed him of the king's impending visit. The importance of the announcement seemed to drain the blood from Beckett's face. With a slight bow, he murmured his acknowledgment, retreating before his composure betrayed him. As soon as the heavy door shut behind him, Beckett's measured steps quickened. By the time he reached the long corridor leading to the housekeeper's domain, he was nearly running. Mrs. Redfern, he called as he entered the housekeeper's sitting room, his voice strained. The king is arriving on Christmas Eve. The housekeeper, a woman whose stern countenance rarely wavered, froze for the briefest of moments. Then, as though struck by lightning, she sprang into action, snatching a notebook from her desk and flipping it open. Everything must be cleaned, top to bottom, she said sharply, her pencil scratching furiously. The royal rooms are to be prepared immediately with particular attention to His Majesty's private chambers and the reception rooms. No dust, no drafts, no complaints. Of course, Beckett replied, already dreading the task ahead. The kitchens, Mrs. Redfern continued, to no one in particular, barely glancing up from her list. Restock with the finest provisions. I don't care what it costs or where you must send for it. Everything must be perfect. Beckett nodded, making a mental note of the grocers and markets to visit at first light. And the king's entourage, she went on, her voice rising in intensity, will require accommodations. Every room in the guests' wings is to be aired and prepared. She paused, her sharp eyes fixing on Beckett. The holly and ivy must be refreshed immediately, Mr. Beckett. Have your men see to it and add mistletoe. His Majesty will expect no less. The decorations should evoke elegance, but nothing garish. Understatement, refinement. The royal coat of arms must be displayed at the main entrance. Beckett gave a tight nod. He dared not tell her that the current arrangements would take the gardeners, the footmen, and the rest of the household days to achieve. There will be more, Mrs. Redfern concluded briskly, snapping her notebook shut. We shall receive a letter of protocol from the royal household soon enough. Until then, we prepare for every contingency. See to it, Mr. Beckett. As Beckett left to carry out the endless